February 2020, Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in South America. A team of climbers discovers an old camera buried deep in the ice, wrapped in fabric, its film frozen in time for half a century. The photos show a smiling woman, a tent, the shadows of people, and then nothing. Those images take us back to 1973, when an American group from Oregon reached the summit, but not everyone made it back. For years, the story of Janet Johnson and her team was written off as a tragic accident until the bodies were found. Today, we're retracing the events of those days, trying to understand what really happened on the mountain where death came quietly, but left too many traces behind. February 2020, Aconcagua, the tallest summit in South America. A group of Argentine climbers makes their way up the Polish Glacier, one of the most treacherous routes on the mountain. At about 6,400 meters, one of them notices something odd, a piece of dark fabric sticking out from the melting ice. They start digging. First, they find an old Nikon camera wrapped in a waterproof case, then a backpack, and a few meters deeper, human remains. The body is astonishingly well preserved, the face still recognizable. A woman, maybe in her early 30s. The climbers call for rescue. The team carefully extracts the body and brings it down. At base camp, the first examination begins. The clothes, American-made, from the 1970s. On the backpack, a faded patch reading Oregon Alpine Club. Inside the camera, a roll of film, somehow still intact. When the film is developed, blurred but visible frames appear. A smiling woman beside a tent. Figures by a campfire, snow-covered slopes. The last shots are shaky, as if the camera was trembling in someone's hands. On one photo, the faint outline of a watch face shows a date, January 14th, 1973. The Argentine police dig into the archives. Dental records quickly reveal her identity. Janet Johnson, 32 years old, an engineer from Portland, and a member of an American Aconcagua expedition, officially listed as missing since January 1973. They compare the coordinates of the discovery with the original route, and then comes the strange part. Her body was found far from where the descent should have been, almost 200 meters off course, in an area no lost climber could have reached by accident. Journalists start digging too. The story from '73 did exist, but barely. Just a few short notes in Argentine newspapers, a brief mention in an American climbing magazine, and nothing more. No investigations, no headlines. As if someone had quietly erased it from history. Back then, in '73, those weren't just missing hikers. 3 out of 6 climbers died. 2 returned alive, but with memory gaps and eerie stories about ghosts on the glacier. One survivor refused to testify at all, and left the country a year later. Now, nearly 50 years on, the story surfaces again. And the deeper the experts look, the less it resembles an accident. The bodies were found in different places. One showed injuries that couldn't be explained by a fall. And the film, the one inside Janet's camera, contains photos taken after the group had supposedly begun their emergency descent. What really happened on the slopes of Aconcagua in January 1973? Why was it kept quiet for so long? And the biggest question? Who was holding Janet's camera when she was already supposed to be safe? To understand what happened to Janet and her team, we first need to understand the mountain itself. Aconcagua isn't just the highest point in South America. It's nearly 7,000 meters of pure vertical wilderness, a place where every step could be your last. The local Quechua people called it the Stone Sentinel, and for good reason. The mountain rises on the border between Argentina and Chile, like a colossal frozen fortress, surrounded by glaciers and sheer cliffs. The first successful ascent was made in 1897 by Swiss climber Matthias Zurbraggen. He went up the north face, the least steep route, alone, without oxygen, without ropes. He spent less than 10 minutes on the summit, then descended in a single day. His journal entry was brief. The mountain is merciful to the brave, but ruthless to the careless. For the next 50 years, only a handful managed to reach the top. In 1934, a Polish expedition led by Konstanty Narkiewicz Jodko opened a new route along the eastern face, through a glacier that would later bear their name, the Polish Glacier. It's a brutal climb, ice walls up to 50 degrees, unstable snow bridges, and a constant threat of avalanches. Out of 8 climbers, only 3 made it to the summit. The rest turned back, beaten by exhaustion and cold. That same glacier would one day become fatal for Janet's team. But in 1973, no one knew that yet. By the early 70s, Aconcagua had earned a strange reputation. On one hand, it was considered the most accessible of the 7,000ers. No need for technical climbing gear, no ice screws or anchors, just walk uphill, they said. But the statistics told a different story. Every year, people died on its slopes. Some froze in their tents when sudden storms swept in. Others got lost in the fog and fell from ridges. Some simply lay down to rest and never woke up. The real enemy here isn't the cold or the ice. It's the altitude. At 6,500 meters, the air holds barely 40% of the oxygen you get at sea level. The brain starts starving, reflexes slow down, hallucinations creep in. Seasoned climbers call it the zombie effect. You're still moving, but your body no longer fully belongs to you. In the early 70s, Aconcagua had no weather stations, no rescue helicopters, no reliable communication. The nearest hospital was 3 days away. If something went wrong, you were completely alone. No one would come. No one would even know. Argentine authorities kept a formal record of expeditions, but there was no real oversight. You filled out a form at a ranger's office, paid a small fee, and off you went. No one checked your gear. No one asked about your experience. The mountain would decide for itself whether you were worthy. And so, in December 1972, into this wild, almost primal world, came a group of Americans from Oregon, 6 enthusiasts who had only ever seen Aconcagua in photos and climbing magazines. They brought shiny new gear, detailed maps, and a burning desire to prove something to themselves. What they didn't bring was the one thing that mattered most, an understanding that the mountain doesn't forgive mistakes. It all began in a small office in Portland in the fall of 1972. Carmi Defoe, 38 years old, a corporate lawyer specializing in business disputes, sat at his desk, spreading maps of South America before him. He wasn't a professional climber. His resume included a few climbs on Mount Hood, a couple of treks through the Cascades, and one big dream, to conquer one of the world's highest peaks before turning 40. Defoe placed an ad in a local climbing magazine, looking for partners for an ascent of Aconcagua, January 1973. Experience welcome, but determination required. 8 people responded. After a few meetups and training hikes, 6 remained. Peter McMillan, 29, a high school gym teacher. Strong build, easy grin, the kind of guy who cracked jokes even when things got tense. His highest climb so far was Mount Rainier, just over 4,000 meters. But Peter was sure, if he could handle that, Aconcagua would be no different. Thomas Zeller, 33, a freelance photographer. His dream is to make a documentary about his first big climb. He brings 2 cameras, a dozen rolls of film, and a tripod. His friends laugh. Why carry all that extra weight? Thomas just smiles. If I don't record it, no one will believe it happened. John Shelton, 41, owns a small outdoor gear shop. He's the most experienced in the group, more than 20 climbs behind him, including a few in winter, but all of them within the United States. Shelton becomes Defoe's second-in-command, responsible for equipment and logistics. Robert Petrovsky, 26, a recent graduate from the University of Oregon, specializing in geology. He dreams of collecting rock samples from over 6,000 meters for his thesis. He's the youngest and least experienced. His only previous climb was a casual hike up Mount St. Helens. And then comes John Cooper. Cooper is on a whole different level. 35 years old, an engineer at NASA, working on astronaut training for extreme environments. He's tested high-altitude suits and spent 3 weeks inside a pressure chamber, simulating 8,000 meters. He's climbed in the Himalayas, the Andes, and the Alps. The moment he walks into the club meeting, everyone realizes their odds of reaching the summit just went way up. Cooper is all about precision and discipline. He draws up a detailed acclimatization plan, calculates daily calorie needs, and inspects every single piece of gear. Some members start to get uneasy about his perfectionism, but everyone agrees. Without Cooper, the expedition would be nothing more than a hiking trip. And finally, Janet Johnson, 32, a mechanical engineer at a small company that designs industrial pumps. Short, lean, with dark-cropped hair, and eyes that always seemed to be thinking ahead. Janet started climbing at 25, right after her divorce. The mountains became her way of coping with pain and loneliness. Over the next 7 years, she completed more than 30 ascents. She climbed every major peak in the Cascades and twice attempted Denali, the highest mountain in North America. Both times she turned back because of weather, and both times she came down alive when more seasoned climbers didn't. Janet was used to going solo or joining all-male groups. She never asked for special treatment. In fact, she often proved stronger and tougher than her teammates. When Defoe invited her to join, she said yes without hesitation. The only woman in the group, a detail that would later become important once people began asking what really happened up there. The team met every Saturday for 2 months. They trained together, studied the route, divided responsibilities. Cooper insisted on full medical checks, EKGs, blood tests, health certificates. By mid-December, everything was ready. They boarded a plane to Buenos Aires, 6 dreamers convinced that in just a few weeks, they'd be standing on the roof of the Americas. December 22nd, 1972. The humid air of Buenos Aires greets the Americans with heat and the smell of asphalt. They spend 3 days in the city, filing papers, buying last-minute supplies, adjusting to the time difference. Defoe gives a short interview to a local newspaper. The reporter, Rafael Maran, a gray-haired cynic with 3 decades in journalism, listens to Defoe talk about plans and dreams, then shakes his head. "Do you understand where you're going?" he asks. Every season, Aconcagua takes someone. Last winter, 2 Frenchmen. The year before that, a German climber. Their bodies are still up there on the glacier. You look like tourists searching for adventure, but you might find something else entirely. Defoe tries to argue. He talks about Cooper, about the team's experience, about how carefully they've prepared. Moran just smirks. The next day, a short piece runs in the paper under the headline, "Americans prepare to challenge the Stone Sentinel." The final line reads almost like an epitaph. "Let's hope the mountain shows mercy." On December 26th, the group boards a bus heading west, across endless pampas, past vineyards and dusty villages. The ride takes 12 hours. Outside the windows, the Andes rise higher and higher, every peak towering above anything in North America. And somewhere beyond that horizon, Aconcagua waits. In the town of Mendoza, the last major stop before the mountains, the team hires a local guide recommended by the climbing club. Miguel Alfonso, 52, a former soldier who spent half his life in the Andes. His face is carved by wind and sun, his hands as rough as stone. He speaks English with a thick accent, but clearly, confidently, the voice of someone who knows the mountain better than most men know themselves. Alfonso inspects the Americans' gear carefully. The tents, solid, modern. Sleeping bags, good quality. Ice axes, crampons, ropes, all up to standard. But when he gets to Cooper's planned route, his face darkens. "The Polish glacier?" he repeats. "Are you serious?" Cooper nods. He explains that the northern route feels too easy, too touristy. They're looking for a real challenge. Alfonso stays silent for a moment, then slowly shakes his head. "The Polish glacier isn't for those looking for a challenge," he says quietly. "It's for those ready to face consequences. There are no easy sections, no alternative routes. If the weather turns bad, you'll be trapped. If someone gets sick, no one will reach you in time." Defoe tries to ease the tension, saying they understand the risks and are prepared. Alfonso looks at him for a long, heavy moment. "You don't understand," he says finally. "Aconcagua isn't just a mountain, it's alive. It can tell who comes with respect and who comes with pride. I've guided people there for 20 years, and every time someone steps onto the Polish glacier with the wrong spirit, the mountain takes them." Janet stands slightly apart, listening. She's not one to believe in mountain superstitions. In her mind, success depends on preparation, not omens. But something in Alfonso's tone makes her uneasy. This isn't folklore. It's the voice of a man who's seen too much. That evening, the group gathers at the hotel. They talk about the guide's warning. Petrovsky is nervous. He suggests switching to a safer route. Macmillan cracks a joke. "If we wanted safe, we'd have stayed home." Cooper, ever the pragmatist, lays out his maps and weather charts. He explains their acclimatization plan. By his calculations, they'll need 10 days for the ascent, enough to climb calmly and safely. Statistics, he says, are on their side. Most accidents happen because people rush or go unprepared. They're doing neither. Defoe calls for a vote. 5 are in favor of the Polish glacier. Only Petrovsky abstains. The next morning, they head toward the trailhead. Alfonso sits silently in the truck's cab, his expression grim. He's agreed to guide them, but the worry hasn't left his face. Right before they set out, he stops, turns to the Americans, and says quietly, almost to himself, "If the mountain starts to speak to you, listen. It warns only once." December 29th. The group begins their ascent from the village of Puente del Inca, the last place with roads, power, and people. They start at around 2,700 meters. The air is still thick, easy to breathe. Alfonso leads a caravan of 8 mules loaded with gear and supplies. The Americans walk light, carrying only small packs. Spirits are high. Macmillan jokes that it feels more like a picnic than an expedition. Janet stays quiet. She knows the real test hasn't even begun. The trail winds along the Orcones River, a roaring stream of meltwater crashing over rocks. The landscape is harsh but beautiful. Red cliffs, sparse shrubs, snow peaks gleaming in the distance. After 6 hours of hiking, they reach Confluencia, an intermediate camp at about 3,400 meters. There, they meet Alfonso's assistant, Roberto Bustos, a 23-year-old from Mendoza. He's been working as a porter and guide helper for 5 seasons. His English is rough, but his smile is constant. Alfonso introduces him simply, "Roberto knows these trails better than I do. If I say right and he says left, follow him." The group spends 2 days in Confluencia to acclimatize. It's standard practice. Let the body adjust to thinner air. Give it time to make more red blood cells. Climbers call it climb high, sleep low, go up during the day, come down to rest at night. Cooper keeps everyone on a strict routine. Each morning, he checks heart rate and blood pressure, logging every number in his notebook. Petrovsky's pulse is high, 95 beats per minute at rest. A warning sign, though not yet serious. Cooper tells him to drink more water. Dehydration is deadlier than cold at altitude. The nights are rougher. Temperatures drop below 10 degrees Celsius. Even with warm sleeping bags, the tents feel like freezers. Janet wakes several times each night, her heart racing, breathing shallow. She knows it's normal, just her body fighting the altitude. Still, the unease lingers. During the day, the group makes short acclimatization hikes, climbing 500 to 700 meters higher, then returning to camp. Zeller films everything: the snow-covered slopes, the faces of his teammates, the endless valleys stretching below. On one roll, there's a frame that later becomes iconic. Janet standing against the backdrop of a Aconcagua, smiling, her hair whipped by the wind. She looks genuinely happy. January 2nd, the team moves on. Their next stop, Plaza de Mulas, the main base camp at 4,200 meters. The trail grows steeper. The mules struggle, sometimes refusing to move, and the team has to coax and push them forward. Alfonso tells them animals sense danger on the mountain better than people do. If a mule won't go any farther, it means the path ahead isn't safe. Base camp is like a small village of tents, teams from Germany, France, Japan, all preparing for their own summit pushes. One German climber, who's already climbed Aconcagua twice, warns the Americans, "The Polish glacier is in bad shape this season. Too many crevasses, unstable ice. You should take the north route instead." Defoe thanks him, but the decision's already made. They didn't come here for the easy way. At 4,200 meters, the body begins to change. Every movement takes effort. Appetite fades. Food tastes like cardboard, hard to swallow. Sleep is shallow, restless. Cooper forces everyone to drink at least 4 liters of water a day. Dehydration sneaks up fast at this altitude. January 5th. The group climbs to the intermediate camp, Campo Uno, at 4,700 meters. That's where the real trouble starts. Petrovsky complains of a pounding headache and nausea, classic signs of altitude sickness. Alfonso gives him acetazolamide, a drug that helps the body adjust faster, but it barely works. By evening, Petrovsky starts vomiting. Shelton isn't doing well either. He's short of breath, even at rest. He tries to hide it, but Janet notices, sees how he grabs rocks just to keep his balance. Cooper calls a meeting. His tone is firm, clinical. "If anyone doesn't feel ready to go higher, say it now," he tells them. "Above 6,000 meters, there's no help coming. Each of us has to be 100% sure." silence. No one wants to be the weak link. No one wants to be the reason the expedition fails. Alfonso watches them quietly, then mutters something to Roberto in Spanish. The younger man nods. Later, one of the Americans asks what he said. Roberto hesitates before translating. He said, "They breathe like they're already dying. They just don't know it yet." January 8th. The group reaches the foot of the Polish glacier, about 5,200 meters above sea level. Here, the familiar world ends. The trail disappears. Ahead lies nothing but a vast wall of ice, rising at a 40-degree angle into the clouds. The wind sharpens, slicing at their faces with icy needles. The temperature drops to -25, but with the wind chill, it feels closer to -40. Cooper leads the way. Then suddenly, he stops, plants his ice axe in the snow, and leans on it. Zeller calls out. No answer. He climbs up to him and sees Cooper's face, pale and unfocused. Cooper tries to speak, but the words come out slurred, like his mouth no longer belongs to him. This is ataxia, a loss of coordination caused by the brain being starved of oxygen. One of the most dangerous symptoms of the altitude sickness. A person loses control of their body, can't walk properly, and doesn't realize how much danger they're in. If they don't descend immediately, brain swelling will begin, and that's fatal. Defoe is panicking. Cooper was their anchor, their safety net. The most experienced, the most prepared. If even he's struggling, what are the others supposed to do? Petrovsky is in bad shape. He's sitting on the rocks, holding his head in his hands. His breathing is fast and shallow, more than 60 breaths a minute. His lips are turning blue. Alfonso checks his pulse. 140 beats. Critical. The young geologist is developing pulmonary edema. Fluid is building up in his lungs, making it harder and harder to breathe. Shelton isn't doing much better. He's trying to hide it, but he sways with every step. Janet can see it. He's running on fumes. Defoe gathers the group. His voice breaks, but he makes a decision fast. They'll split up. Cooper, Petrovsky, and Shelton will go down with Alfonso and Roberto. At a lower altitude, their conditions should improve. 4 will continue upward. Defoe, Zeller, McMillan, and Janet. Alfonso protests. He says that 4 people on the Polish glacier without a professional guide is suicide, but Defoe won't back down. They came here for the summit. Turning back now would mean failure. They've got maps, a compass, a GPS. They'll be fine. Cooper, slowly coming to his senses, tries to stop them. He begs them to wait a day until he recovers. Defoe shakes his head. The weather window is closing. The forecast calls for wind and heavy snow in 2 days. If they don't go now, they'll lose their chance. Janet stays silent. She feels fine, better than anyone else. The altitude barely touches her, but something twists inside. Instinct whispers that something's wrong. Splitting up here, at this height, is a serious mistake. But she says nothing. She doesn't want to seem weak, doesn't want to be the one who ruined the climb. Before they part, Alfonso gives them a radio. He explains how to reach base camp and tells them to check in every 6 hours. If they miss even one call, he'll come after them. The group splits. 4 head upward toward the glacier, 5 descend towards safety. Zeller looks back. The figures below shrink, turning into tiny dots on the white slope, then disappear around a ridge. Ahead, there's only ice, wind, and silence. McMillan tries to crack a joke, but his voice shakes. Defoe studies the map, checks the coordinates. Janet quietly straps crampons onto her boots and tests the rope. None of them know that this decision, to split up here, now, will be the point of no return. From this moment on, everything will unravel fast. And when, 10 days later, rescuers begin taking statements from the survivors, each of them will blame themselves for not saying, "Stop, we're going back together." But right now, on January 8, 1973, at an altitude of about 17,000 feet, 4 Americans take their first steps onto the Polish glacier. The next day, January 9th, 4 in the morning, they start climbing in the total darkness, their headlamps cutting narrow paths through the night. They've packed only the essentials: light backpacks, thermoses of hot tea, energy bars, a single safety rope for all of them. The tent stayed below. They plan to be back before nightfall. Classic Alpine style, quick up, quick down, no delays. The first couple of hours go smoothly. The ice is solid, the crampons bite deep. Defoe sets the pace. slow, steady. Janet follows just behind, belaying him from above. Zeller and McMillan close the line. But when dawn comes, everything changes. The wind, calm through the night, suddenly picks up. Gusts hit 50 kilometers an hour. Snow that had lain still now whirls in the air, stinging their faces, filling their hoods and collars. Visibility drops to barely 20 meters. At 19,000 feet, the glacier changes. Crevasses appear, narrow, hidden under a thin crust of snow. Defoe plunges in waist-deep before Janet manages to catch him with the rope. His heart pounds so hard it feels like it might burst. They lose 20 minutes pulling him out. Then it gets worse. The slope steepens. They're forced to carve steps into the ice with their axes for every single move. Their progress slows to barely 100 meters an hour. By Defoe's plan, this stretch should have taken 3 hours. Instead, it takes 6. By midday, the group reaches about 20,000 feet. The summit is less than 800 vertical meters away. But ahead lies the hardest part, a 40-meter ice wall, nearly vertical. Back in 1934, Polish climbers named it the Last Barrier. Most teams turn around right here. McMillan is the first to say what everyone's already thinking. We won't make it. If we start now, we'll get caught on that wall in the dark. Defoe checks his watch. 3 in the afternoon. It gets dark at 6. 3 hours for the climb, another hour to get back to a safe spot. The math doesn't work. Zeller suggests turning back, trying again tomorrow. But tomorrow the storm will hit. Today is their last chance. Janet says nothing. She feels the altitude pressing on her brain, slowing her thoughts. Every decision comes through fog. She knows they should go down, but she can't make herself say it out loud. Defoe makes the call. They keep going. The summit is too close to give up now. They start the climb up the wall. Slow, painful, relentless. Every meter is a battle. The ice is slick, the axes slip. Their hands go numb, fingers lose strength. At about 21,000 feet, Zeller slips, falls 3 meters, and hangs from the rope. The others barely manage to catch him. When they finally reach the top of the wall, the sun is brushing the horizon. The sky burns deep red. The temperature plummets. The summit is still nearly 400 meters away, but daylight is fading. 40 minutes, maybe less. Defoe stops. Finally admits the truth. They won't make it today. They need shelter. Now. Janet spots a small hollow beneath an ice overhang. They start digging, scraping snow with axes, with their hands, whatever they can. After half an hour, they've made a narrow cave, barely 2 meters deep, just wide enough for the 4 of them to squeeze in like sardines. Darkness falls in seconds. They switch on a single headlamp, saving the batteries. In the dim glow, all they can see are pale faces, fogged-up goggles, frost clinging to beards and lashes. Outside, the wind howls so hard it sounds like the mountain itself is groaning. Snow packs against the entrance. The air grows thin. Breathing becomes harder. McMillan tries to joke that it's the worst hotel he's ever stayed in. No one laughs. They'll spend 12 hours here, in the dark, in the cold, at an altitude where the human body slowly dies, minute by minute. January 10th. Dawn breaks over 21,000 feet in complete silence. No one really slept. Some drifted off for a few minutes, then woke gasping or coughing, or because they couldn't feel their toes anymore. Defoe keeps checking, making sure everyone's still breathing. At this altitude, you can just not wake up. When the first light filters through the snow-packed entrance, they crawl out, exhausted, frostbitten, but alive. The thermometer reads -32. The wind has calmed, but the cold cuts like glass. Defoe pulls out the radio, tries to reach base camp. Nothing. Maybe the battery's dead. Maybe the signal can't get through. He tries again, then again. Only silence. They face a choice. The summit is less than 400 meters above them. They could try to go for it. The weather's holding, but they're spent, dehydrated, running on fumes. The right decision is to descend, while they still can, while visibility's good. Defoe looks up. The summit feels so close he could almost touch it, but he knows the mountain has beaten them. They decide to go down. They pack their gear, check the ropes. Janet moves slowly, as if underwater. She straps on her pack, zips her jacket. Every motion takes effort. Zeller asks if she's okay. She nods, but her eyes are distant, hollow. They start the descent. Defoe leads, cutting the path. Macmillan follows. Zeller's third. Janet brings up the rear. After 20 minutes, Zeller glances back. Janet has fallen behind, 30 meters or more. She's standing still, leaning on her ice axe. He shouts her name, waves his arm. She doesn't move. They climb back up. As they get closer, they see Janet's face, pale, wax-like, her lips blue, her breathing shallow. She looks at them, but it's as if she doesn't recognize who they are. "I can't go any farther," she whispers. "My legs won't move." It's cerebral edema, the brain swelling from lack of oxygen, pressing against the skull from the inside. Coordination breaks down, vision blurs, thoughts unravel. If she isn't taken down right now, seizures will start within hours, then coma, then death. Defoe tries to lift her. Janet takes 2 steps and collapses, just folds onto the ice like a rag doll. Macmillan grabs her under the arms, tries to pull her up. She jerks away, screaming, "Leave me! I can't make it anyway!" Mountaineers call it the third man syndrome, when the brain is so depleted that the will to live simply fades. The body just wants to lie down and sleep. Forever. Zeller and Macmillan drag her by force, one pulling from the front, the other pushing from behind. They move 15 meters every 10 minutes, agonizingly slow. The safe altitude is still more than 1,000 meters below. Defoe checks his watch. Noon. At this pace, they'll be caught on the open slope after dark. All 4 of them. Janet falls again. This time, she doesn't get up. She lies on her side, eyes half closed, mumbling something no one can make out. Macmillan bends closer, hears her whisper, "Go without me. I'm tired." They sit beside her for 20 minutes, try to get some warm tea into her. She turns away. They try to lift her again. Nothing. Defoe pulls out the map, tracing lines with a trembling finger, trying to calculate options. Macmillan watches him and knows there are none. They simply don't have the strength to carry her. If they try, they'll all die. Zeller turns away, shoulders shaking. Defoe speaks quietly. "We'll go down to camp, bring help. We'll come back for her in a few hours." Everyone knows it's a lie. In this cold, 30 below, 6,300 meters up, a motionless person doesn't last more than 2 or 3 hours. They leave her a sleeping bag, a half-empty thermos of tea, a chocolate bar. Janet doesn't even look at them. She lies still, eyes closed, breathing slower and slower. The 3 start their descent. None of them look back. 200 meters down, guilt wins over fear. Zeller stops first. "We can't just leave her," he says. Macmillan says nothing, but his eyes say the same. Defoe shakes his head, tries to explain there's no other choice, but his voice wavers. They turn around, start climbing back up. Janet is still alive. She's in the same spot, curled up inside the sleeping bag, still breathing. A miracle. Zeller and Macmillan make a decision. They'll stay with her, try to bring her down together. Defoe will go ahead, reach the camp, bring help. It's the only plan that makes any sense. Defoe leaves. The last thing he sees, glancing back, are 2 figures bent over a third one on that endless white slope. Zeller and Macmillan lift Janet to her feet. She can barely stand, leaning all her weight on them. Step by step, meter by meter, they start the descent again. It's painfully slow. In an hour, they covered less than 100 meters. Darkness falls fast. The sky fades from blue to violet, then to black. The temperature drops even lower. Zeller switches on his headlamp. Its beam cuts a narrow tunnel through the night, lighting only a sliver of ice ahead. At around 6,100 meters, they lose the route. No landmarks, no tracks, just endless white in every direction. The compass points downhill, but the trail is gone. They move blindly, hoping to stumble on familiar ridges or rocks. Instead, they find a crevasse. Macmillan steps forward, and the ice gives way. He drops chest deep before Zeller grabs his jacket and hauls him back. They both crash onto the ice, gasping. Below them yawns a black void. One broken rope, and he'd have vanished into it forever. They know it's suicide to keep moving in the dark. They have to stop. Wait out the night. Janet barely reacts now. She sits on the ice, head slumped forward, eyes half open. Macmillan tries to make her drink, but she turns away. Her pulse is weak, fading. She's slipping away. Zeller digs a hollow in the snow. They crawl inside, the three of them press together, trying to hold on to whatever warmth is left. But at 6,000 meters, there is no warmth, only cold. A slow, merciless cold that drains life one breath at a time. Morning, January 11th. Janet isn't breathing. McMillan shakes her, shouts her name, nothing. Zeller checks her pulse, nothing. They sit beside her for a long moment, unable to believe it. Yesterday she was still alive, talking, moving. Now she's just a body, frozen, still. McMillan suddenly jumps to his feet, says he's going for help. Zeller tries to stop him. They should stay together, but McMillan isn't listening. Panic has taken over, logic is gone, only survival remains. He leaves, stumbling down the slope, sliding, falling, getting back up. The ice beneath him is smooth, treacherous. At about 5,800 meters, he takes a wrong step and drops. The fall lasts only seconds but feels endless. He tumbles head over heels, slams into icy ridges, scrapes his face against the slope, finally stops 40 meters lower, sprawled on a narrow ledge hanging over a void. He lies still, stunned, then tests his body. Arms, legs, ribs. Everything hurts, but nothing seems broken. Somehow, he's alive. He looks up. From where he fell, he can't see anything, just a white slope vanishing into the clouds. Zeller is still up there, alone, with Janet's body, or maybe not alone anymore. McMillan starts down again, slower now, cautious, every step deliberate. He knows, if he falls one more time, luck won't save him. 6 hours later, he reaches base camp. Defoe is already there, sitting in the tent, clutching a mug of tea. When he sees McMillan, he jumps up. "Where are the others?" McMillan opens his mouth, closes it again. No words come. "How do you say that Janet is dead, and that Zeller's still up there, alone?" Alfonso listens to McMillan's broken story, his expression hardening. "You left Zeller alone, at 6,000? His voice is sharp. McMillan nods, avoiding his eyes. I needed to get help." Alfonso doesn't waste time blaming him. Within 20 minutes, he's gathered a rescue team. Roberto, 2 local guides, medical gear, spare ropes. Defoe and McMillan go too. Exhausted or not, guilt won't let them stay behind. They move fast, using the fixed lines on the steeper sections. By evening, January 11th, they reach around 5,900 meters, the spot where McMillan said he left Zeller. They find him an hour later, sitting on the rocks, arms around his knees, rocking back and forth, muttering. Alfonso approaches carefully, calls his name. Zeller lifts his head. His eyes are wild, unfocused, glassy. "They keep walking," he says quietly. "Soldiers and mules, whole columns of them. I counted, more than 50. They're carrying crates, heavy ones. I asked where they're going. They didn't answer." Alfonso knows the signs, high-altitude hallucinations. The mind, starved of oxygen, starts to create its own reality. People see companions who aren't there, hear music, voices, footsteps. It means the brain is on the edge. They lower Zeller on ropes. He doesn't resist, just keeps mumbling about the soldiers, how they came from the east, disappeared into the fog, and how one of them had no face. Back at base camp, Zeller drifts in and out of consciousness for nearly a day. When he finally wakes, the first thing he asks is, "Where's Janet?" Defoe tells him the truth. Her body is still up there, around 6,100 meters. Recovering it would be too dangerous. They'll have to wait until spring, when the weather softens. Zeller listens in silence. Then something shifts in his expression, a flicker of memory. He says that just before he blacked out, he saw someone, a man in a blue jacket, standing maybe 30 meters away, watching him. Zeller called out, but the man didn't move. Then he turned and walked upward, toward the summit, against all reason. "Who could it have been?" Defoe asks. Zeller shakes his head. "I don't know. Maybe there was no one there. Maybe I was already losing my mind." But then, after a long pause, something surfaces. "The jacket," he says quietly. "It looked like Cooper's, exactly the same." The tent falls silent. Cooper is far below, in Mendoza, recovering from altitude sickness. He was airlifted out 4 days ago. There's no way he could be anywhere near 6,000 meters. January 14th. The weather clears a little. Alfonso decides to climb again, to locate Janet's body and mark the position for the official report. Roberto and one of the local guides go with him. At around 5,700 meters, they find a body. But it isn't Janet, it's a man, lying face down, arms spread wide, a blue NASA jacket. Alfonso rolls him over, and Cooper's face stares up at the sky, frozen, eyes open. But how? Cooper is supposed to be in a hospital bed in Mendoza. People saw him there just 2 days ago. Doctors confirm it. He was under observation, still recovering. Alfonso checks the pockets, passport, driver's license, a small notebook, all in Cooper's name, all genuine. It's him. They examine the body more closely. There's almost no frostbite. His clothes are intact, but on his abdomen, something strange. The jacket is pierced clean through, as if something had passed straight into him with incredible force. A round hole, maybe 3 centimeters across. The skin around it isn't torn or burned, just neat, precise, like it was made by a surgical tool. But here, at nearly 6,000 meters, there are no tools, no people, just ice, rock, and wind. Alfonso stands silently for a long time, looking down at the body. Then he says to Roberto, "We're going down, now, and not a word of this to anyone until we understand what happened." But by then, it's already too late to keep quiet. Within a week, the Argentine police will climb up to the site. The investigation will begin, and with every new answer, the questions will only multiply. January 17th, 1973. The police station in Mendoza has been turned into an improvised interrogation room. Captain Eduardo Romero, gray-haired, weary-eyed, with 20 years on the force, sits across from 4 Americans: Defoe, McMillan, Zeller, and Shelton. All of them look hollowed out, weather-beaten, with dark shadows under their eyes. A translator sits nearby, struggling to keep up with the rapid Spanish. Romero starts simply. "Tell me what happened on the mountain." Defoe goes first. He describes the decision to split up, the climb onto the glacier, Janet's condition worsening. His account is calm, coherent, a tragic sequence of events, an accident. No one's fault. The mountain was just stronger. Romero listens without interrupting, takes notes, then asks, "And Cooper? Explain Cooper to me." Defoe hesitates, says he doesn't understand. Cooper went down 4 days earlier. He was in the hospital. How could he be found dead at nearly 6,000 meters? Romero opens a folder. Inside are hospital records from Mendoza. Cooper was indeed admitted on January 10th and 11th. Doctors examined him, ran tests. But on the 12th, he disappeared. Walked out of his room that morning, told a nurse he was going for a short walk. No one saw him again until Alfonso found the body. He went back to the mountain, Romero says. The question is, why? No one answers. Shelton finally mutters that maybe Cooper felt guilty for leaving the team behind, that he wanted to help save Janet. Romero shakes his head. A man recovering from severe altitude sickness cannot climb back to 6,000 meters in 2 days. Physically impossible. The questioning drags on for 6 hours. Each of them is interviewed separately. The stories line up, mostly, but the details don't. McMillan says Janet died on the morning of January 11th. Zeller insists she was still breathing at midday. Defoe can't recall the exact time. The altitude, he says, makes memory unreliable. Romero notices something else. When he asks about the hole in Cooper's body, all 4 react the same way. Surprise, confusion. Either they truly don't know what happened, or they're all very good at pretending. On the 3rd day, a detective arrives from Buenos Aires, Carlos Mendez, a specialist in unusual cases. He studies the photos from the site, the medical reports, the witness statements, and then his conclusion shocks everyone. This wasn't an accident, Mendez says at a press conference. The circumstances point to the possibility of deliberate actions that led to the deaths. We're treating the case as suspected involuntary manslaughter. Reporters erupt with questions. Who's responsible? Are there suspects? Mendez stays evasive. All he says is that the investigation is still ongoing. The American consulate steps in immediately. Lawyers fly in from Buenos Aires, demanding that the baseless accusations stop. A diplomatic standoff begins. The Argentinians insist on continuing the investigation. The Americans demand their citizens be sent home. By January 22nd, under pressure from both sides, the 4 Americans are released, officially under a travel ban until the case is closed. Unofficially, everyone knows that once they leave Argentina, the investigation will quietly disappear. They fly back to the United States on January 24th. At the airport, they avoid interviews, hiding their faces from the cameras. February 1973. The Oregon Alpine Club holds a closed-door meeting. The board, the lawyers, and the 4 survivors are all there. The minutes are sealed. To the press, the club issues only one statement. "A tragedy occurred. We mourn the loss. There will be no further comments." Why the silence? Why didn't the club push for an independent inquiry? And why did the families of the victims, Janet and Cooper, never demand the truth? Later, rumors begin to spread. Some say the club was paid to stay quiet. Others claim they were threatened with closure, or that one of the survivors revealed something so disturbing no one dared to make it public. Officially, the case is closed in March of 1973, ruled as death by accident during a mountain climb. But the truth doesn't stay buried that easily. April 1973. Alfonso returns to Aconcagua, this time not as a guide, but as a witness. The Argentine government organizes an official expedition to recover the bodies, hoping for evidence to close the case once and for all. Alfonso agrees to lead the team. He's the only one who still remembers the exact coordinates. Alongside him are 2 forensic experts from Buenos Aires, a photographer, and 4 experienced mountain rescuers. The weather is kind. Autumn in the Andes is gentler than winter. The wind is light, the visibility perfect. The group ascends quickly, following the same route the Americans took in January. On the 3rd day, they reach about 5,700 meters. Cooper's body is still there, just where Alfonso found it months ago. After 3 months, nothing has changed. At that altitude, there's almost no decay. The cold preserves everything like a freezer. The experts begin their examination. They photograph the scene from every angle, take measurements, record every detail. The lead expert, Dr. Ramirez, a pathologist with 30 years of experience, studies the body closely. There's little frostbite. The face is well preserved, the features recognizable. The hands are clenched, a common sign of death by hypothermia. The clothing is intact and fully fastened. The backpack is missing. Maybe he dropped it to move faster. Then Ramirez notices a small hole in the jacket. He unzips it and examines the wound in the abdomen. His face hardens. "This isn't from a fall," he says quietly. "Look at the edges. They're clean, almost perfectly round, about 3 centimeters across. Something went straight through the body with enormous force but didn't tear the flesh." Alfonso leans closer. "What could do that?" he asks. Ramirez shakes his head. "At this altitude, nothing. An ice axe would leave a jagged wound, a fall on rocks, multiple injuries. But this, one clean puncture, as if someone drove a metal rod straight through him and pulled it out again." They inspect the clothing around the wound. The jacket is pierced front to back, an entry hole in the front, an exit in the back. But the exit wound is smaller than the entry. That makes no sense. Usually it's the other way around. The exit is larger, torn open by the impact. The photographer takes close-ups. Ramirez collects tissue samples from the wound's edge, hoping the lab might reveal what caused it. Alfonso scans the area around the body. The slope here is gentle, no more than 20 degrees, no cliffs, no sharp rocks. If Cooper had fallen, he would have simply slid down the ice like a sled. There's no way he could have sustained that kind of injury. "Maybe he was struck," one of the rescuers suggests. "By someone from the group?" Ramirez studies the angle of the entry wound. The strike came in straight on, perpendicular to the body. If someone had swung an ice axe or a knife, the cut would be slanted. But this went imperfectly horizontal, fast, very fast. Alfonso remembers what Zeller said about hallucinations, about soldiers and mules, about the man in the blue jacket climbing higher. Maybe those weren't hallucinations after all. Maybe there really were other people on the mountain. But why would anyone attack a random climber in the middle of a glacier? For what reason? Cooper wasn't carrying anything valuable. His money, his papers, everything's still there. There's no motive. Ramirez makes a preliminary statement on the spot. Cause of death, hypothermia, and fluid loss from the wound. The injury was inflicted by an unidentified cylindrical object. The circumstances remain unclear. They seal the body in a special recovery bag, preparing it for transport down the slope. Alfonso stands aside, looking out at the endless snowfields. The mountain is silent. The wind slips between the rocks, whispering secrets it will never tell. "What happened here?" he murmurs. No one answers. Only the echo comes back, repeating his question, scattering it into hundreds of fading voices that vanish into the emptiness. 2 years pass in silence. The case stays closed. Aconcagua returns to its stillness. But in the summer of 1975, a Japanese expedition makes another discovery. On February 18th, at about 5,680 meters, someone spots a hand sticking out of the snow. Human, frozen solid. They dig out the body of a woman, Janet Johnson. Her face is damaged, a broken nose, a collapsed cheekbone, a deep wound on her forehead. Dr. Ramirez once again conducts the examination on site. "This isn't from a fall," he says, "a frontal blow, like from a fist or something heavy with a flat surface. There's no gear with her, no backpack, no ice axe, no rope, just her clothes. Her hands are clenched, nails broken, classic defensive wounds. She tried to fight back." The body lies about 20 meters from where Cooper was found, off the main route, a place no one would wander by accident. Beneath her, a dark patch of frozen ice. Later, tests confirm it's human biological fluid. Ramirez writes his report, "Death by hypothermia, injuries sustained shortly before death." The nature of the trauma suggests possible involvement of third parties. The Argentine prosecutor's office reopens the case. The wording changes. Death under undetermined circumstances with signs of possible foul play. The American consulate intervenes again, demanding proof. Another diplomatic scandal erupts, but by now, there's nothing left to prove. Too much time has passed. Too much ice has melted and frozen again. January 1976. A German climbing team finds Zeller's camera at about 5,400 meters. The film is developed in Buenos Aires, 28 frames in total. The first 15 are ordinary, smiling faces, campsites, wide mountain views. But then things start to shift. Frames 16 through 22, high-altitude shots, blurred figures on the glacier, an ice wall, the inside of a snow cave. Frame 23, the back of a man in a blue NASA jacket. The photo's timestamp matches January 11th, when Cooper was supposedly already in the hospital. Frame 27, a close-up of Janet's face, her eyes wide open, mouth twisted as if she's screaming. The final frame, number 28, a reflection in the snow. A dark silhouette stands over the camera. In its hand, something long, like an ice axe. Detective Mendez reviews the photos and calls in experts. Everyone agrees on one thing. The last shots were taken in extreme circumstances. Theories multiply. A fight within the group, jealousy, panic, breakdown at altitude. A chance encounter with others, smugglers, soldiers. Zeller's words about mules and uniforms resurface. Cold War installations. Mass hallucinations from lack of oxygen. The film offers no answers, only more questions. Years go by. The survivors drift apart. Defo changes his name, passes away in 1989. McMillan quits climbing, refuses to speak about Aconcagua ever again, and dies in 2003. Zeller spends 6 months in a psychiatric clinic, then moves to Canada, living as a recluse. In 1998, he disappears without a trace. Only John Shelton remains. For 20 years, he says nothing. Then, in 1994, he gives a single interview. "We came with the wrong intentions," he says. "We wanted to conquer the mountain, but Aconcagua doesn't let itself be conquered. It took those who saw too much." "What did they see?" the reporter asks. "I don't know. I went down early, but Cooper went back up alone. Why? What made him do that? He knew something. The mountain keeps its secrets, and those who try to uncover them, it keeps too." 2 months later, Shelton dies. His family says that in his final weeks, he would wake up screaming about shadows on the glacier. In 2020, modern technology allows experts to restore the last photograph in high detail. They enhance the image, sharpen every pixel, and then they see it. In the snow, not one silhouette, but two. One standing above the camera, the other lying down, sprawled across the ice. Its outline unmistakably human. Who took the picture? Who was standing? Who was lying there? The case remains closed. The witnesses are gone. And Aconcagua stays silent. Maybe the truth is still frozen somewhere on its slopes, buried deep in the eternal ice, 6,000 meters above the world, waiting for the mountain itself to decide when to reveal it. Until then, there's only the echo, the wind between the rocks, and the shadows, forever trapped in the icy memory of the stone sentinel.